Hey everyone! For this video, I'm going to take a look at the results of the just finished September 2024 Heritage Signature Auction. To start, let's look at a few of the lots I talked about in the preview, starting with the Fantastic Four #1. In all of the reminiscing about Doug's 9.6 showing up at a steakhouse 20 years ago, I never talked about what I thought the value would be of this book. I really didn't make any predictions. I did make them, I just didn't talk about it. And it was very difficult to value. There are so few high-grade sales to compare with, and one of them, the CGC 9.2 selling for $1.5 million, is clearly a bit of an outlier. Extrapolating roughly from that sale, this book would be worth $6 million, which is just a crazy number and was never going to happen. Looking at the few past results that are out there and doing my normal hand-waving magic, to come up with a value, I was thinking $2.5 million for this book would be a strong price. $2,040,000 isn't quite what I wanted to see for this book, but ignoring the $1.5 million elephant in the room, this is a great result for one of my favorite books in the entire hobby. So there's that. Next up, we've got the Amazing Fantasy 15 Curator Pedigree. This book now has sold 5 times that I know of since 2002. Selling for $35,650 in 2002, $60,000 in 2007, $395,000 at Comic Connect in 2017, $566,000 at Comic Link in 2021, and now $540,000. While the seller took a loss on this book, I think the result is actually okay. Considering that the $566,000 was in 2021 when a lot of highs were set, and that, for example, a 9.2 of this book sold for just over $800,000 in 2023. I think this book did pretty well. Assuming a generic 9.0 is therefore worth $400,000, this book actually overperformed. So was that like curator magic? I don't know, but I think it did pretty well. Now let's take a look at the John Buscema Wolverine #1 cover original art. One thing I should have mentioned during my preview was that this cover had the highest number of people tracking it compared to every other lot in the auction. It was like 700 people tracking it compared to maybe 650 for the FF #1. By the way, $600,000 puts it on the kind of first page, middle of the first page for Heritage Original Art sales. And a lot of the ones ahead of it are actually paintings and stuff like that. So it's pretty high up in terms of, or like Crumb, which is kind of a different category than traditional American comic superhero art. So it's really high up there, right behind one of my favorites, the Todd McFarlane Amazing Spider-Man 328 cover, which I'm a big fan of. So Batman 251 mass copy, CGC 9.8. This is a book that hasn't fallen off a cliff since 2021. 9.8s were an $11,000 book in 2021. This copy sold for $28,800, and a non-pedigree copy sold for $33,000 last year. Such a great book, and it's actually bucked the trend of going down since 2021. Now let's take a look at this TMNT #1 signed copy CGC 9.8. This book the trend is precise. The last 2 copies sold for exactly $87,000. So hey, it's also like the $245,000 and $250,000 sales never happened, and this is just kind of what they've always gone for since 2018 when it kind of got close to $100,000. It'll be interesting to see how this book trends over the next kind of 5 to 10 years. Like I said before, I think it's a great book. I just think it had a hype-fueled run and kind of dropped down a little bit. So we'll see where it goes. Fantastic Four #5, CGC 9.2. The next couple of lots we're going to look at are lots that I didn't cover, but I think are interesting. And I'm not sure why I didn't cover this one, because Fantastic Four is #5 is one of my favorite books in the whole hobby. And I didn't cover it. Unfortunately, this one is an example of buy high and sell low. This exact copy, same serial number and everything, was purchased at Heritage 2 years ago, September 8th, 2022, for $180,000. Last week it sold for $132,000. with 20% buyer's premium and whatever seller's commission he paid. On top of that, the seller probably lost 50% on this sale, which is a rough result. You hate to see it, especially when it's the first appearance of Doctor Doom, which, as I said, is one of my favorite Silver Age books. Now we're going to take a look at X-Men 94 CGC 9.8. This book, in this grade, has been on a roller coaster ride for almost 20 years. In 2006, a copy sold for $25,000. This is the first sale in this grade in GPA, so I'm assuming it was the first one that came up for sale. I don't quite remember that being the case, that it had taken 5 years for a 9.8 to be graded. I do remember how long it took for a 9.8 of like Daredevil 168 to be graded, but I don't remember this particular book. I could look it up. I'm sure we commented on it on the forum, so there's some note from me somewhere. Then it hit a high, continued to sell well. It hit a high of 29,589 in 2010. In 2013, it crashed down to a low of 6,988. In 2018, 5 years later, it hit a high of 18,000 and a low of 9,000. So you're not really sure what you're going to get in 2018. In the heady days of 2021, it sold twice for $72,111 and $63,000. This copy sold for $31,200. I haven't tracked like the individual serial numbers through this Odyssey, and I actually should, because it would be interesting to see who did well and who did poorly. But whatever, there's a lot of winners and losers in that series of sales. It's a crazy book. Great book, but a crazy book. Let's end with a really cool, to me, and positive result. This cover by underground comics artist Vaughn Bodie, creator of Cheech Wizard, and his collaborator Larry Todd, is the earliest Vampirella cover that Heritage has ever sold. And when I posted about it a couple of weeks ago, I was amazed at the reserve. $90,000 plus buyer's premium. I'm a huge fan of Bodie and have a few black and white pieces in my collection, so I'm generally familiar with the values on his work. The power of Vampirella apparently had this cover selling for more than 5 times the previous high for his work at Heritage. Let me just show you real quick. So as you can see, the previous high was $20,400. This one sold for $132,000. Obviously, Vampirella has a few more fans than Cheech Wizard or Junk Waffle, but still, this was an amazing, kind of really impressive number for a piece of Bodie art. That's it for now. This auction was really interesting to track and had some fascinating results, both on the high side and the low side. This seems like a trend that's going to continue for some time as the hobby works its way through the highs and now lows of 2021 to now. At least I'll have something to talk about. It won't get boring. Next week I'll be talking about the Christine Farrell collection, which has started to flow out into the hobby through Heritage. As I mentioned in my last video about the new Action 1s in the census, she was one of the 2 people who are known to have amassed complete DC collections, and she passed away in April of 2024. Her books are being sold by Heritage, and many of the most interesting DCs are hitting the auction block at the end of October 2024, the 25th and 26th. So I'll be covering those books and looking at some really amazing material that she has. Hope to see you there.